Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton Reimer as always. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's February break, so teachers don't have to work. It's great.
Good. Ours isn't until March. I mean, we just had almost a week off. We had an in-service day, a couple snow days, so we were coming off 5.5 day break. So
That's
we
not
get
too
a
bad.
February break too. Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna get right into things. First of all, the Four Nations is the kind of start of the show. I guess when you're watching this, it'll be over and done with. But we're recording this before Canada US play in the final. So I'm gonna ask you, Dayton, what do you think of the performances from the Senators players? Looking at the list I kind of just brought up on the screen, I think we're gonna go backwards actually. So we'll start with Linus Ullmark. He only played 2 periods of play throughout the tournament. So what were your thoughts on his play?
I mean, I thought he did fine. Remind me again who they played when he was in?
The US, I believe.
That was the US. Okay. Yeah, like he was solid. I don't think Sweden looked fantastic against the US, but they did fine. And then leaving early wasn't great. Right? Didn't he was the one who left early?
Or no, Gustafsson started the period, and
Gustafsson.
then and it was against Finland. Sorry, in their 4-3 loss, right?
Okay.
Gustafsson was sick, left in the first intermission.
That's what it was. Yeah, I flipped those two guys. I thought Gustafsson came in relief for Ullmark, but no, Ullmark came in relief. Yeah, I would have liked to see him play more. I think arguably he's their best goalie at the tournament right now. But, no complaints is about, I think, all I can say.
There wasn't much to say about him. Came in relief. It was, I mean, Sweden didn't have a fantastic team. On paper, sure they did, but they did not perform well. So, what about Nicholas Matinpalo? Surprise addition. If you told me at the beginning of this year that Nicholas Matinpalo would be on the Finnish best on best team, I would say, are you insane? I believe he only played 4 games in the NHL last year, and mostly in the AHL. Looked fine last year. Comes up this year, just over the past month and a half or so, and he's looks pretty darn good with the Senators. And obviously, it took quite a few injuries. They lost Miro Heiskanen, they lost Jani Hakanpää and Rasmus Ristolainen, and they had to bring in 3 more guys. And it actually turns out that Ville Heinola is the only Finnish defenseman that has played an NHL game this year that is not on the team. So Matinpalo gets his shot. I think he looked pretty darn good in the tournament. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought pretty solid. I love that he's on Team Finland. That's, I think, a pretty big statement from the NHL saying that this guy is worthy of an NHL spot, right? I know the Finns don't have exactly a ton of NHL players that they can draw from, so they are kind of, quote unquote, scraping the bottom of the barrel for defenders. But, as you mentioned, Ville Heinola isn't on the team, right? Matinpalo is there instead of him. I thought having him there is great. That's a fantastic step for him.
Yeah, and he played really well. I mean, Finland, their whole mantra of defensemen is pretty good defensively, not the best puck movers. I mean, obviously Heiskanen and Ristolainen are pretty good at it, but in general, like the prototype of a Finnish defenseman, mostly more physical and defensive side of things. Matinpalo fits that really well. And I mean, he fit in there just as well as I think Hakanpää could have. He fit in there just as well as like Henri Jokiharju and a couple other guys. So I thought he played really well, and they played him against the top guys. Like when they were playing against the USA, Matinpalo was up against Jack Hughes and Austin Matthews, their line for most of the night. So it's hard to really complain about anything that Matinpalo had coming out of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Jake Sanderson did not get in a whole bunch of games. Well, I guess he played half the tournament for them. He's going to play tonight in the final, and he played in the last game against Sweden, which didn't mean a whole bunch for the States. But what do you think about Sanderson? I guess part of it is going to be projecting tonight. But what do you think?
I think it's another kind of Matt and Paolo situation, right? He got in because of injuries, but it's really good to see that he was included. I think it is another really definitive statement that this is one of the best American defensemen in the NHL. And he is with the Senators, right? He's only got one game. So it's tough to make real big sweeping claims. I thought he was fine against Sweden. We'll see how he does tonight, I guess.
Yeah, I think tonight is the big test. I mean,
yeah,
he looked good against Sweden. Like there was no issues. It was just it wasn't much. But yeah, tonight's going to be a big one. All eyes on Sanders. That's not true. Next up is Brady Tkachuk. All eyes on Brady Tkachuk. Everybody forget about Sanderson already. I am not here to give betting advice. I do not condone sports betting, anything like that. Before the tournament, I put a couple bucks down on Brady Tkachuk as the MVP of the tournament. Feeling all right about it right now. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck is probably going to take that, but I guess I'm not giving any advice because this tournament will be over by the time anybody's watching this. But yeah, Brady Tkachuk has been a totally different beast this tournament, and I cannot wait for him to bring this back to Ottawa. He has not played like this. Well, he plays like this every single night, but not this well. And so I'm really hoping that he brings back the winning culture. I mean, they're in the final. All of these games have basically been playoff games, and he has kicked butt this entire time. I'm just really excited to see what he brings back to Ottawa. What do you like about what you saw so far?
Oh, he's fired up. Like every time he steps on the ice, he is making things happen, and he's pushing guys around, and like he's playing like we know he can play. Like this is stuff that Senators fans have seen a lot. But like you mentioned, it's just kind of taken to that extra degree, right? He's in that extra gear. He loves playing with the US logo on his jersey. It's really showing that he's got a bunch of pride in what he's doing, and he is trying to make the most of it. I think he's been fantastic. His game against Canada was probably one of the best games I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, didn't it suck seeing him so good against Canada?
Yeah, taking the NHL teams out of it, yeah, that was a rough one. Definitely didn't love seeing the Canadians get manhandled a little bit. Seeing Brady Tkachuk being one of the manhandlers was nice, I guess.
It was bittersweet for sure.
Yes, there's the term.
Yeah. I think, he just put it up to a whole new level in this tournament. He has been phenomenal. I really hope to see more of that tonight against Canada, as long as Canada comes out with the win. So before we move on from the Four Nations, give me your prediction.
I think Canada can come back and win it in the final. They've done it before in the past. They just need to. I think they need that adversity, the early struggles, and they're going to come out firing on all cylinders. Because if they don't, there's going to be a lot of criticism.
Yeah, it's almost like we saw this a month and a half ago, eh?
Well, a little bit.
World Juniors. A totally different scenario, but also the exact same scenario. Like you look at the roster construction, obviously they're missing out on like Mark Scheifele, Cole Caulfield. Not Cole Caulfield, he's with America. Duh. But Mark Scheifele missing from the team is inexcusable. Like Anthony Cirelli over him. I understand you want the defensive guy in the bottom six, but Scheifele's been pretty good defensively this season and last season. And I think he's second in goals among all Canadian players. I don't know. Scheifele should be on that team. There's a few other guys too. But they're not, and we're here. And this is not the World Juniors. This is the Four Nations. I'm hesitant to say Canada because of Connor Hellebuyck. That's the biggest thing for me is Connor Hellebuyck. And I think if I was going to put a bet on this game, it would be for the United States to take it just because of Connor Hellebuyck.
I mean, that's fair. He has been almost unbeatable. Canada had some great shots against him in the last game, and he just turned almost all of them away.
Yeah, he's got like a 957 in this tournament. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
All right, moving on. One thing that Habs fans either hate or love is Juraj Slafkovsky. he came out and said that his goal is to play like he is Brady Tkachuk. Lots of Senators fans said, haha, you could have had Brady Tkachuk, but you took Jesperi Kotkaniemi and rubbed it in their face a little bit. But I'm on the side of like Habs fans should absolutely love this. As much as they might hate Brady Tkachuk, they hate him because he's good at what he does. Mm-hmm. And Juraj Slafkovsky, he's got the size, he's got the meanness to him. He hasn't shown it a whole bunch, but he has as a prospect, and he has a little bit. He's got that meanness to him that he could be like a Brady. He's got the offensive skill without a doubt. I think that this is a great comparison for Slafkovsky to try and bring himself to be. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of players should aim to play like Brady Tkachuk. He's a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve. He is in every time the Senators are on the attack, and he's also a pretty solid defensive player too. He plays physically, he plays passionately, and he's got great offensive instincts, right? He's a fantastic player that honestly a lot of players should try to, emulate. So if the Canadiens had somebody like that with Slafkovsky, that would be a major upgrade, I think, for their team.
Yeah, they do when they don't have somebody like Brady Tkachuk. Like, obviously, you look at their lineup, they've got Josh Anderson, they've got Brendan Gallagher. Like, they provide that grittiness and that toughness that Brady brings. But none of them have the skill set of being that mean guy, being super physical. Like, Brendan Gallagher can really make you mad and piss you off a bit. But he's not that physical, and he's not that big. He's not going to destroy you open ice or along the boards or throw you over the bench or whatever. And he can't really score either. But like, he's got that grittiness to him like Brady does. And then you look kind of higher in the lineup. You have Josh Anderson, who's on the third line. He's a bit more like Brady Tkachuk, but like a good third line version of Brady Tkachuk, which is kind of what we hope Ridley Gregg can be. Mm-hmm. So having Slafkovsky, if you can be on that top line and be another Brady Tkachuk, I think that bodes really, really well for the Canadiens.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, like, the Senators already have someone like Gallagher and Anderson, and that's Ridley Gregg, right? He is not as high end offensively, but he will piss you off. He is great at getting under opponents' skins. I was just talking with my dad the other day about some of the greatest empty net goals ever scored, and Ridley Gregg has to be top 3.
I would say he's top 2, and he's not number 2.
Well, there was the really good Sidney Crosby empty netter. I think it was Crosby in the Four Nations just recently, which is why the conversation.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That was a really good one too. That was a really good effort by him. Yeah, that's fair. There's not many that are as legendary as Greg's though. That was pretty great. So if I told you in 2018 that the player picked first overall in 2022, was that when Slafkovsky was drafted? 22? I think so. If he was like first overall picks in the future were trying to be like Brady Tkachuk, how excited would you be? I mean, people were upset with the pick at the time. I would have preferred Philip Zadina on draft day. Glad that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. That's why I don't get paid the big bucks. But like, what else can Brady Tkachuk do to be a role model for players? Is there anything missing from his game? Is there anything that he needs to get better at?
That's a tough question. I think earlier I would have said staying out of the box. Like, he was in the penalty box quite often. And that's tough to play a in-your-face game when you're sitting for 2 minutes. He did struggle with getting penalized kind of at poor times. Not so much this year. I don't think.
So do you know who's first in the league in penalty minutes?
Oh, is it Brady?
It is not. It is Nikita Zadorov, but Brady is second.
Okay.
yeah, but go ahead.
He's always going to rack up a ton of penalty minutes, just as the game he plays. I think earlier they were a bit more inopportune, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I don't 100%.
I agree. They're coming at better times now. There's no good time to take a penalty, but they're not coming at stupid times now. Or if they are, it's because the game is 4-1 and there's 4 minutes left. And he's getting a 2-5 and a 10 for instigating in a fight and whatever. But Brady Tkachuk giveth and Brady Tkachuk taketh. He takes a lot of penalties. He's also tied for 4th in the league in power play goals with 11. So you can't really get too mad at him if he's going to be producing that much. So yeah, I don't know. You'd like him to stay out of the box. You'd like him to have 0 penalty minutes, but that's never going to happen with a guy like Brady Tkachuk. So you make the most out of what you got. He also, I don't know if like a bench minor penalty, if Brady Tkachuk serves that, does that go against his penalty minutes?
I mean, I imagine.
Because it's not his penalty, it's a bench minor penalty, but because Brady is the one to always serve those, so it doesn't make a huge deal if he's getting those against him or not. But yeah, he's second in the league behind Nikita Zadorov and one ahead of Matthew Olivier, a couple ahead of Mark Kastelik, Arbor Xhekaj, AJ Greer, Emil Lilleberg, Braden Paschal, Martin Pospisil, Tanner Janelle, Pat Maroon. I don't know if you're understanding that Brady Tkachuk is the only impactful player on that list. It'd be really nice to have him stay out of the box a bit more. But you're 100% right. He's taking them at less timely times.
Yeah. I think that's maybe the biggest thing for Brady. I don't know if there's a lot of other weaknesses in his game. Just he's a passionate leader, and he's always going to be that way. Hopefully he can channel it a little bit better as he gets older and grows. And I guess there is maybe some consistency issues, but he's also young, so that's not something I'd fault him too much for, right? I don't think he's even 25 yet, right?
I think he is 25.
Just 25? Okay. I know.
Yeah, he's 25. He turns 26 in September.
Okay. So.
But yeah, it's a good thing for the Canadians to want their top player to be like Brady Tkachuk. I mean, do you want Brady Tkachuk to be the top player on your team? Maybe not. Maybe you want another guy above him. But if he is your top player, there's nothing wrong with that. Moving on, the Senators made a big announcement. They teased it as if it was going to be a blockbuster trade on Twitter. And then they announced the return of the Hamburgler. So Andrew Hammond, one of the greatest runs of goaltending the NHL has ever seen, especially the Ottawa Senators. They've never seen anything like that. He had a 21-2 record through the last 23 games of the season. When he joined the team, they were 10 points out of the playoff spot with like 23 games to go, I believe. And he played, no, it was 27, I think. I don't know. But they were 10 points out of the playoff spot. Never a good thing. And he got them into the playoffs, and they finished with 99 points that year. So Andrew Hammond saved that season on his own. We started to see a little bit of that with Levi Merilainen this year. Obviously not to the same extent, which is totally fine. You can't expect any guy you call up to be Andrew Hammond. Do you think that it's necessary? So I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be loved in Ottawa. Obviously, he's going to be a Senators legend for the rest of his life. He's never going to be remembered for, I think he played a couple of games with the Canadians and the Devils, like 1 or 2 games. But is this necessary? Does there need to be an Andrew Hammond night in Ottawa this season?
I don't see why not. I think this is a great way to honor those flashes in the pan from your franchise history. This is a return to something that is really important for Senators fans, right? This was a moment where things looked bleak and someone came in and stepped up and turned the franchise around, right? At least for that season, right? He never really repeated his numbers. I don't think he ever posted a winning record in the NHL after that.
He did not.
Which, yeah, sometimes that's how it goes. But he definitely deserves to be honored in Ottawa. I don't think you have to go as far as like retiring a jersey or anything like that. But he deserves a place on a wall of honor. I don't think that's controversial at all.
Does he deserve a place in the Ring of Honor?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think that is a thing for teams to honor impressive achievements from past players. It doesn't have to be for entire careers with that team. It can be just for one season that was incredible. And that's what Andrew Hammond had. So to make a night of it, that's great. That's something that this franchise hasn't really done before, especially with, minor players. But Hammond always had this cult following. He's got a nickname, the Hamburgler, right? That's fantastic. They threw hamburgers on the ice. Like, there is lore to this. And the Senators should 100% embrace that.
Yeah, I do love the lore to it. And Curtis Lazar eating one of the hamburgers, that was the funniest thing ever. It was
immediately, but
yeah, 100%. That would be disgusting. Who knows where that burger was and how long it was sitting there. But I do think that Andrew Hammond has a place in the Ottawa Senators history. That's what's important. Obviously, I typed up this question as if I disagree that it's not necessary, but I'm 100% with you. I wish I could play devil's advocate here because that's my favorite game, but I can't. There's no argument against Andrew Hammond being a huge part of this team's history. He's got the best single season save percentage at a .941. That's ridiculous, and it was only in 24 games, but he has it. He has the best winning percentage in a season with 21-2. Like, that's ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, he carried that team to the playoffs pretty well on his own. Like, that's not much of an exaggeration. And it kind of not reminds me, it's totally different, but talking about him being in the Ring of Honor and you saying it doesn't have to be his whole career, some players don't spend a ton of time with one team and they still get their jersey retired. And one person that I always think of with that is Marian Hossa. He only spent 8 seasons with Chicago, which is a long time. Brady Tkachuk has been in Ottawa that long already, and if he retired today, I don't know if his jersey gets retired. Obviously, Tkachuk hasn't been as impactful as Hossa was, but like Marian Hossa, he had some good seasons with Chicago, a couple 70-point seasons and whatnot, but his jersey got retired, and I always thought that was kind of questionable. I don't think that was a slam dunk to have his jersey retired, but teams do that just based on vibes sometimes, and Hossa was a big vibe guy. He won 3 Stanley Cups there. Like, he was part of that dynasty that they had, and so even though he wasn't Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves, he was still a huge part of that. And so even though Hammond wasn't a superstar goalie for 20 years in Ottawa, I still think that he deserves a spot in the Ring of Honor because he deserves it. Now, I don't think he should be retired like Hossa, but yeah.
Yeah. Who would you add after Andrew Hammond as minor players who had fantastic brief appearances?
I don't even... You know who I always just really liked? And I don't think that he had a fantastic brief time in Ottawa, but like just some random people that I loved on the Senators playoff run was Brian Gibbons and Tommy Wingles. I loved them. I don't know why. Or Alex Hemsky. I liked it when he was in Ottawa.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I was one of the few that liked Alex Burrows being in Ottawa. Not many did.
Yeah. That was not my favorite.
Yeah. But there's just a couple like small ones. Obviously, I wouldn't do anything for any of them, but there's a few guys that stick out to me, like especially Alex Hemsky. I think I would put him there. You could say Clark MacArthur or even Dion Phaneuf.
Clark MacArthur is a good one.
Yeah.
A couple of my favorites, Magnus Arvidsson.
Oh, that's a good one.
He only was in Ottawa for, I think, 6 seasons here. But as a sophomore, he got 21 goals. He was great as that kind of like the Swedish cohort coming up with Alfredsson and some of those guys. Like, he was great. Norm McIver would be an interesting one. He led the team in their very first season in points. He's a defenseman, scored 63 points, though. He's like one of the only bright spots from that team. And I think honoring him would be a nod at where they came from, right? I don't know.
He scored 63 points that year, and wasn't he also like minus 55 or something?
46, but yes.
That's insane. That team was so bad. If we're talking about one-season wonders, yes, awful. Yeah. If we're talking about one-season wonders that I do think could deserve a spot in the Senators' Ring of Honor, bring on Alex DeBrincat. I'm just kidding. That would not go down well.
That would go very poorly. Yes.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
We'll have to take a day. We'll have to do some research on just like the best one-season wonders in Ottawa, and then we'll have to bring that to an episode one day.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah. Or even not even one season, but just like 3 or less that everybody forgets about. Most forgettable Senators. We'll do it that way. So maybe we'll do that for next week. Start doing your homework.
Okay.
All right. So moving on, last thing we're going to talk about today, it's going to be a bit of a shorter episode, I think. So we already talked about Nicholas Matt-Palo a little bit. The Senators have a problem right now. It's not a good one, but it's not a bad one. They have too many right-handed defensemen. I was going to say NHL caliber, but I rescinded that. So on the right side, they have Artem Zub and Nick Jensen. Obviously, they're the top 2 guys on the right side. And then below that, there is I don't even know what to call it, a cohort of meh. And as good as Nicholas Matt-Palo has been, I have said on this show 100 times now that Matt-Palo has been fantastic and deserves a spot. He's not like incredible. He's not a game-breaking defenseman. He's meh, which is kind of what you need on your third pair. And that's no disrespect to him. He's been great at what he does. But Travis Hamonic has to be on the roster. He's going to be the 7th defenseman. He should not be in the lineup. He probably will be, but he shouldn't be. So the 6th defenseman to play alongside Tyler Kleven. Who do you have there? So the options are Matt-Palo and Jacob Bernard Docker. One of them will have to be waived probably by Saturday because I think Jacob Bernard Docker is healthy. So what do you do? Who do you keep? Who do you waive? Are you okay with losing Jacob Bernard Docker? Are you okay with losing Nicholas Matt-Palo? Do you think either of them will get claimed? Just what are your thoughts on kind of the right side?
I'm okay with losing JBD. I don't love it. It's not my first choice, but I think he would be somebody who could potentially pass through. He's been fine this season. But he's been playing about the best we've seen, and it's still it never really gets above fine. Yeah. He was a first round pick, right? This was somebody who was going to compete as a solid 2-way defensive defenseman, potentially a second pairing guy, right shot, and he's not that. And I remember kind of buying into the hype a little bit when people were talking about, oh, this is going to be, the best defenseman, the organization, and he's going to help things out immensely. And before that, I was very much thinking like this guy is third pairing material. I imagine I've written something about that before. I'd have to really go digging about it. But I think in my big prospect pyramids, initially I was ranking him in like tier 3. Like he's fine, but I don't see him being an impact player. I bumped him up to tier 2 eventually. Yeah, but that's his, yeah. So like him and Lassie Thompson just never worked out, really. And he is playing a game that you can apparently go and get a free agent to replace. And that's what Matt-Palo has been doing. He plays a much more consistent defensively, right? If you look at their goals against per 60, and I know Matt-Palo is playing less, but not a lot less. He's averaging almost half a goal less per 60 minutes that they play on the ice. He's also contributing less offensively, but you don't need him to contribute offensively. You just need him to be consistent and make sure that there's not a lot of scoring chances against. And, between those two guys, I'd pick Matt and Paolo.
I would as well, and I'm fine with losing Bernard Docker on waivers. He hasn't done a whole bunch. I don't think he gets claimed on waivers, to be honest. Maybe a team like the Oilers is looking for some more defensive depth for the playoffs, and go ahead. Obviously, I don't want to see him gone for nothing. Could you trade him for a 4th round pick by Saturday? Maybe. It's possible, but it's not a huge deal. Obviously, you want to keep the guy around and have the depth there, but it's fine. I think Matt and Paolo has deserved that he belongs in the NHL. I mean, he's playing well against literally the best players in the NHL outside of a couple Russians and Germans. But there's no excuse for Hammond to be in the lineup. I think we can both agree on that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think if you send Matt and Paolo down, he's getting claimed. That's almost a
I think so.
Because everyone's been able to watch him, right? He's playing in one of the best tournaments right now in the NHL. So, yeah, people are going to go, this guy's a good option. And I think if it's 25% chance that JBD gets claimed, it's a 75% chance that Matt and Paolo gets claimed.
Yeah, I agree. So, with Matt and Paolo's play, obviously, assuming everybody's healthy, you don't really need to touch Zub or Jensen. But if Matt and Paolo is in the lineup, do you look to upgrade on him by the deadline? Or do you like him in that spot?
I like him in that spot. I don't think it's the strongest third pairing in the NHL, but it's not the worst. He's a solid defensive defenseman, like I said. So I'm comfortable with it. I don't think you can rely on this entire roster to win you a Stanley Cup. I think some changes have to happen a lot in depth, but for this season, Matt and Paolo is a great option who will do what you need to. And maybe next season he's even better because we haven't really seen what he can do yet, right? This is technically his rookie season.
It's players like Matt and Paolo, like Juraj Slafkovsky, sometimes they just disappear. And I wonder if Ottawa does waive him, he doesn't get claimed, he never plays an NHL game again, even though he just showed that he deserves it. Sometimes it just happens that a player just disappears. He wants to go back to Finland at the end of the season, he doesn't sign, and then we're spending all this time talking about Nicholas, Matt, and Paolo, and 3 years from now, somebody's going to look back and see this video and say, who are they even talking about? And it's going to be funny. But no, I think Matt and Paolo certainly has an NHL future ahead of him if he wants it. And yeah, I mean, there's no reason for him not to play the last 26 games of the season or whatever Ottawa has left. There's no reason for them not to play him.
Yeah. I think if they can get something decent in return, more than a 3rd round pick, because I wouldn't trade him for anything less. You don't want to move him just to move him. And he's been more successful over the time he's been here than Schmeichel. I think 100%. Schmeichel struggled to adapt to the North American game. He was arguably the more talented player when he was signed, just both of them coming out of Europe. But I don't think the Senators gave him the appropriate chances that, when he deserved to get a chance, they didn't give it to him. And he got frustrated. And I think, after his contract was done, he was like, yeah, I'm done with this, going back home to, Czechia. Whereas Matt and Paolo took a little bit more of a calm approach, right? Not calm. That's not the right word. A measured, right? He's doing things kind of day by day. And then he gets his opportunity with the new regime and it's working out a lot better. I don't know. I think he has more staying power than some of these other European free agent signings that we've seen in the past. Just in the way that he has played in the AHL and then in the NHL, and now he's on a national team. But Yeah, I definitely wouldn't move him just to move him. If you can get something, great. But I'm in no rush to move on from someone like that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, that'll wrap things up for today. Dayton, thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoy watching the Four Nations tonight. It should be a very fun game, and let's see Tkachuk and Sanderson dominate. That'd be nice to see. And everybody, thanks for coming to watch. Make sure to check out all the other episodes on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. Make sure to check out all of the content on the website and the Substack. There's lots of Ottawa Senators content, lots of trade deadline stuff. So it's all there. Go check it out, and we will see you next time.